Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is January 18, 2021. And a few days ago, AOC did a live stream for like an hour on assorted topics. I saw this covered elsewhere. I know there's some juicy tidbits. What I'd like to do is just play the whole thing for you and comment on it. I know that there are some particular points that I'd like to discuss, but we'll just watch the whole thing and see what all is in there. I will tell you, I watched about 2 minutes of this so far, and I was starting to make notes before I just decided, let's, fuck it, we'll do it live. And we are going to do it live, but let me just tell you, my initial impressions, if the whole video is like this, for those of us who have been out here wondering at all, is the whole Bernie Sanders and the squad, air quotes, totally transform the Democratic Party thing, how's that going? It's not going anywhere. I mean, first of all, not only have we not seen results, but I think it's pretty clear listening to AOC and her whole concept of what happened at the Capitol and why it was important. She is already talking like one of the elites who are completely out of touch with the masses, like already. She's well trained in her kind of co-opting left language talking points, but it seems to me this is her talking off the cuff, and by God, please let this settle any doubts as to which side she's on. I keep seeing this, the squad are effective allies. Well, effective at what? Doing what? What have they done? And no, they aren't effective, and they're not fucking allies. The Democratic Party are there to manipulate, gaslight, and exploit us. They, just like the right does to all those religious people, it kind of like co-ops them and, to shore up political support for their like bullshit, destructive economic order and imperialism and all this stuff. It's doing the same to the left into the Democratic Party, and Bernie Sanders and AOC are the tools. It's opportunism. They're trying to co-opt us. We all need to give them a giant middle finger and say no and stay independent. And we need to form an independent left party. All right. So with all that said, let's get into the live stream and, why I'm talking the way I am. I think it will be pretty clear pretty quick.
Hi, everyone. Hey, everybody. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Oh, my goodness. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thank you for joining. I figured I would take some time to address all of you, answer any and all questions that you may have after this just incredibly violent and traumatizing week.
So let me stop you right there. First of all, this is where Congress gets to act like victims. You're not fucking victims. I don't support the MAGA, insurgency or whatever on the Capitol. I don't agree with MAGA at all. I think that this is probably the start of the whole Donald Trump MAGA Tea Party, whatever the fuck, air quotes, right-wing populist, read fascist movement, really starting to take on a life of its own. That's terrible news for us all. But AOC works for arguably the most violent government in history, the only one that dropped atomic bombs on any country, that right now has bases in dozens of countries around the world and is running wars. We're now in the philosophy of total war, where you just kill people you haven't identified as soldiers, but they're just wantonly killing people all over the world. But here we see AOC, there's a guy out there, Derek Jensen. He's like an anarcho-primitivist. I don't agree with anarcho-primitivism, but he makes some great points about how in the hierarchical system of capitalism that we have, violence is only allowed to flow downwards. It's just like in a dysfunctional family. Like if the victims in the family ever fight back, that's not allowed. And it's the same thing here. I'm not trying to justify what MAGA did, because I think that there are other segments of, would-be oppressors. But this whole playing the victim thing, she's going to keep this up for several minutes. She works for one of the most violent governments in history and is directly voting on legislation related to the violent subjugation of tens, hundreds of millions of people around the world. So let's just keep that, frame of reference here for context.
For so many people. Hey, everybody. Oh, it's so great to see folks hopping on. Hey, everyone. I just wanted to hop on and I want to talk to each and every one of you about what happened this past week, answer your questions about what happened then, answer your questions about what's happening right now, answer your questions about what, you may have, any questions that you may have about the future, the coming days, weeks, months, frankly, years ahead of us. I'll start by just lightly describing a little bit of what I went through on Wednesday and what all of us went through. So Wednesday, as we know, was the president, frankly, assisted by members of Congress, incited an attack on the United States Capitol. This is known as an act of insurrection, an act of sedition. And frankly, he is a traitor to our country, a traitor to the United States. And I don't really think that there's any other way you can put it. There is no other way to really there's no other way to put it. You attack our democracy, you undermine the elections of one of the most revered democracies in...
Most revered democracy? Is she talking about the United States? Because the United States, air quotes, democracy is non-existent. I don't say that as a MAGA supporter. I say that as a socialist. We have widespread voter suppression, widespread, not just in the Democratic primary where we saw it on a blatant level, but in about a quarter of polling stations in the United States, there's paperless electronic voting that cannot be audited. You cannot do a recount. Vote flipping software has been documented. So making such a thing that doesn't have a paper backup, extremely easy to throw, and there's no way to contest it. That combined with the amount of people thrown off of the ballots, this has been well documented by a journalist named Greg Palast, Palast. He's been documenting that since like 20 years ago. We do not live in one of the most revered democracies in the world. The U.S. democracy is a joke. I don't say that because I want Donald Trump to win. I didn't really have a dog in that fight, to be honest, of Biden versus Trump. I was very ambivalent about who became president. On the one hand, Trump is terrible, but he at least didn't start a bunch of new wars, but he is also terrible and worrisome in other respects and was, doesn't have a managerial bone in his body and was completely, even from a capitalist perspective, mismanaging the pandemic to a horrific degree. Biden, on the other hand, probably more competent at just doing basic management of capitalism, but more likely to start wars, and the Democratic Party is predators in their own right. But this whole idea of like Trump attacked our anyway, but here it goes with playing the victim, and let's just see what else she has to say.
The world, one of the oldest democracies in the world, and you've attacked our elections. You vote to undermine them. You amplify a lie to undermine faith in our systems and our democracy, and knowingly amplify a lie.
All right, let me just repeat again. No one should have faith in U.S. elections. No one should have faith in U.S. elections. We need a complete, and I say this as somebody who strongly believes in democracy. You're going to have elections. They need to be transparent and fair. The U.S. election system is neither transparent nor fair. We need a complete overhaul of the election system in so many ways. I mean, making Election Day a national holiday, like all kinds of ways. You need a complete overhaul. Anyway, this is a ridiculous joke. I mean, then there's the whole electoral college system, on and on. But because Joe Biden won, that's where this is coming from.
And if you are Senator Ted Cruz or if you're Senator Josh Hawley, and frankly, if you're many members of Congress, you cast that vote not out of genuine belief, but you cast it out of political ambition.
Well, okay, here's one Democrat realizing that the Republican Party are cynical, craven assholes motivated solely by greed and like vanity. Most of the Democrats are exactly the same way, so this cuts both ways. And again, it's just about Democrats happened to win this time. They happened to get the green light from the owners of this country, the bourgeoisie, to, go ahead and take power. I mean, the fact that it's even close between Democrats and Republicans tells you something about how terrible the Democrats are, because the Republicans are a vomitously horrible party. Basically nothing that they stand for even approaches something appropriate to the 21st century. That you have to be pretty bad to lose to them. And I know that there's the gerrymandering, and that kind of structural stuff that goes on. But how are the Democrats not able to challenge this? They don't want to. And that's the bottom line here is it's two parties. It's good cop, bad cop. They work in tandem to perpetuate the neoliberal consensus. So, that's just a key thing to realize about this entire system is there's no real opposition between the two parties. So talking about the elections and, the Republicans don't have shame. Yeah, of course they don't. I mean, neither do a lot of Democrats, but they pretend to, whereas the Republicans, in many cases, don't even pretend to, like Ted Cruz, who is, of course, the Zodiac killer. So this indignation is just pretty hard to swallow.
And that is what they did. They incited an attack on the Capitol. And many, many, many members of Congress were almost murdered.
Point of fact, is that true that many members of Congress were almost murdered? Do we know that? Because I know some of the MAGA people were carrying some kind of weapon, like the guy that tased himself repeatedly until he killed himself by tasing himself accidentally. Is that actually true, or is that AOC like blowing this out of proportion? Because what I saw is they went in, they messed some papers up. One guy stole the podium, and I do know that one of the guards was attacked and killed, is my understanding. But were they there to like? These were not death squads. I mean, it was a violent, angry mob, like no doubt. What it was not was like a paramilitary team with, carrying like assault weapons. That's what it wasn't. They were not there to actually like hold it, occupy the Capitol building and like hold it off militarily for days or weeks. That was not clearly the intention. It was a bunch of, it was like a amped up version of like what happens after the like local college team wins the football game or whatever. It was a bunch of like chowderheads just, thinking that they're doing revolution. Were they there to murder Congress? Anyway, point of fact, not sure that one's true.
Many congressional staffers were almost killed. Many children of members of Congress were there. Children.
Just again, the government you work for, the Democratic Party that you're part of, murders children around the world daily, hourly. But when it happens to you, it's a big problem, but not when you're doing it to other people. Okay.
Some of them were adult children. You have folks like Congressman Jamie Raskin, who tragically, Congressman Raskin, Jamie is a very close, very, very deep and close friend of mine. And he tragically, and his family tragically lost their son just days ago, days before this attack, and his daughters were with him in the Capitol days after that trauma.
The amount of privilege that what she's saying right here is dripping with is, I cannot stand it. You're talking about the most privileged people in the world, some of the most privileged people in the world. You're talking about people who, at the federal level in Congress, are elected representatives of the bourgeoisie of the United States, the imperial core. The way she is talking about these people, her dear friends, and it's like the blinders that she already has on. She's been there for 2 years, and the blinders she already has on, and how assimilated she already has become. Can you hear it? Because I can hear it. The trauma, the violence. This is the same person who, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, was saying that people telling her, quote, fuck you, end quote, on Twitter. She said, quote, this isn't tone, it's violence. People telling her fuck you and go fuck yourself is, quote, violence, according to AOC. She already is in this little cult of privileged victimhood, and she's only been there 2 fucking years. You work for the imperial core, AOC. You work for the imperial core, and when somebody who I happen not to agree with MAGA politically, but somebody turns that violence around, and it's just nonstop self-pity is what this is. It's people thinking that she works for us and whatever. No. They work for themselves. They work for the 1%. They are the lapdogs of the 1%. They're the servants of the 1%. They don't work for us at all. They're in it for themselves. They don't care about you. She cares about them. She cares about her good, deep, dear friend, Raskin, just like Bernie Sanders cared about his good friend, Joe Biden. He cared more about dinner parties with Joe Biden than he cared about us. This is more of that.
And they nearly lost their lives too. As for myself, I had a pretty traumatizing event happen to me.
We're living through a deadly pandemic right now, where the political party she's in, that AOC is in, really the entire government, but her political party in particular, has been blocking any kind of aid as far as the enhanced pandemic aid since the end of July, because it might have helped Donald Trump politically and other reasons. I don't give 2 shits about her imagined trauma here compared to the trauma we're all living with a government that doesn't give 2 shits about us, let alone the foreign policy, the violent, actually violent, imperialist foreign policy, whether it's war, whether it's direct military occupations and attacks, whether it's sanctions, whatever it is, the violence that this government is inflicting around the world, and her thoughts are me, and the other lapdogs of the 1%. Get this through your head. This is her talking. Amazing.
And I do not know if I can even disclose the full details of that event due to security concerns, but I can tell you that I had a very close encounter where I thought I was going to die. And you have all of those thoughts where, at the end of your life, and all of these thoughts come rushing to you. And that's what happened to a lot of us on Wednesday.
Unless this is ending with, and so we're going to end all the wars, and we're going to institute a UBI and Medicare for all, and we are going to impose harsh restrictions on capitalists, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to fucking hear it. Because if all of these, near-death experiences don't result in a revelation that you work for the imperial core, which is just committing unspeakable atrocities around the planet as we speak, I don't want to fucking care. You make $175,000 a year. You're a celebrity and you have massive power, which you're using in furtherance of empire. I don't give a shit about your well-being. I just don't. You can't make me. It's unbelievably tone deaf. But again, anytime that, it's turned around on them, this is the same person who made a video, bring the ruckus, make elected officials uncomfortable. And we mean through, obviously she wasn't talking about insurrection in that bring the ruckus thing. But again, it's like as soon as it exceeds their tolerance, that's really all they care about is their comfort, their tolerance. And do you think that this person is really an ally? That's, again, the main question to me. None of this is being couched in terms of what is going on in this country. It's all being put on Trump. And I hate MAGA, don't get me wrong. But none of this is being given a sociological analysis in the slightest. It's all poor us Congress people and just evil Trump, and this is all happening in a vacuum. So far, she's not helping anyone understand anything.
And I thought I did not know if I was going to make it to the end of that day alive. And not just in a general sense, but also in a very, very specific sense. I think it's an opportunity for a lot of us to talk about trauma as well. One thing that I can say is that in the aftermath of this, there have been a lot of counselors and there have been physicians in the house talking about the importance of, some of the rapid response that happens, and that what we can do in our minds and our brains after you are exposed to a traumatic event. And I think what's really important is that, because whenever any person has an encounter where they think they're going to die and they go through that process, that is a traumatizing event. And things don't have to get that far for something to be traumatizing.
So what in God's name is she talking about right now? First of all, not a single member of Congress or their staffers was harmed. The only person who was, I believe, a black security guard who was killed, beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. That's not a highly armed mob that was there to liquidate Congress at all. Okay? And as horrendous as that one death was, we live in a country where there's like a mass shooting a day. That's in our world, though. That's in the world of the 99%. So it doesn't matter to people like AOC, who, again, by the way, is not mentioning that, is in a political party that hasn't really done jack shit about the fact that we went from having 0 mass shootings a year to like, I don't know how many hundred of mass shootings a year. It's off the charts now. I mean, it's insane. We live in basically an open war zone in this country. And all they can think about is themselves and their safety. These are not leaders. Listening to her talk, this person is useless. This isn't an ally. This is a person who is absolutely useless to us. She's not thinking in terms of a movement. All of that language is there to just provide cover and lip service and co-opt our energy. She's not with us. They're out for themselves. She's gunning for the Senate. She's doing whatever she's doing. And none of it is for you. All Democrats do is they just pretend, manipulate, gaslight, and exploit. That's all they do. They never deliver. Never. The Obama government in 2009 to 11 had complete control of the government. They passed a right-wing healthcare plan that is falling apart. I don't know about you, but I don't have medical coverage through work. I go through the marketplace. My plan has gotten significantly worse every year. This year, 2021, the plans were like unusable. And because it's a pandemic, I finally had to opt for the silver coverage because the bronze was like worse than useless. I was like paying for nothing, basically, and paying a lot more than I would have paid last year. But they don't care. They want you to wait for healthcare. They just think about themselves. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Really excellently heard trauma. And I'm so sorry to whoever is the author of this thought, because I don't remember who said this, but I once heard trauma described as too much, too fast, too soon. And so when psychologically a development happens that is way too much, way too jarring for an individual, if it happens, or if something happens that happens way too fast, or if it happens way too soon, that could be a traumatizing event for a person. And I think what's really important is that, you know, there are degrees of it, but for a lot of people, whether you are a service member who served in our armed forces abroad, whether you are a person that maybe experienced domestic violence, any traumatizing event at all could, you know, Wednesday's events could have been very triggering for you.
I just want to point out, aside from the fact that she's babbling here, she just mentioned service members who committed atrocities on oppressed people around the world, didn't mention the oppressed people receiving that trauma. Like, at the end of the 2000s, I believe there was 1 million dead Iraqis from Bush's invasion that was rubber stamped by the party she's a member of. 1 million people. I mean, and just the toll of the U.S. sanctions alone, sanctions, is gargantuan. But this is what you get from the Democratic Party. Do you hear an ounce of self-awareness here? I don't.
Too. And you don't have to have been there. You could have just seen it on TV. You could have just heard about it. But if you at all feel unsettled in a deep way, that your intuition is kind of telling you, you know, something's not right, go check in with somebody.
Nobody cares about this but you and the bootlicking servants that you work with in Congress on behalf of the 1% to fuck us all over. What she's trying to do here now is somehow tie like her trauma as like a 1%er to, you know, basically trying to get us to invest emotionally in her trauma. That's what's going on right in this segment of the video. And it's disgusting.
You know, there's no problem with that. There's no shame in that. It's healthcare. Mental health care is healthcare, which is... yeah, healthcare we don't have because you wouldn't do force the vote and you wouldn't, you know, actually challenge Pelosi in a significant way to get even a vote on. Healthcare, you know, that thing we don't have in the United States. Why, by the way, why we fight for mental health care to be included in healthcare provisions and bills like Medicare for All. Yeah,
you fight for it to be included in legislation which sits on a desk, which you don't actually fight for. It's been years. I mean, the Democrats have been talking about universal health care since the 1930s or 40s. It's only used as a carrot and an illusion and a mirage to pull you into the party. They never actually fight for it, and they never will. Never. They just hold it out there like, oh, this is something we stand for. We don't fight for it, but we stand for it. We believe in it, but we don't fight for it. We don't enact it, but we believe in it. Well, guess what? That doesn't make you an ally. It makes you an opponent. It makes you an obstacle, is what that makes you.
Anyways, all of that is an aside. I want to cut straight to the chase. Wednesday was an extremely traumatizing event. And it is not an exaggeration to say that many, many members of the House were nearly assassinated.
Okay, again, it was not an extremely traumatizing event. Maybe for her, who makes $175,000 a year to further the empire, not for the rest of us. I haven't met a single person in real life who was, air quotes, traumatized by that Capitol attack. I have not met a single person. I mean, maybe worried, upset a little bit, or just like concerned. That probably, if anything, I met a few people who were concerned about it, but definitely not traumatized. Come on. This is just shameless. And again, factually, is this true that many members of Congress were almost murdered? I would really like to hear her back that up.
It's just not an exaggeration to say that at all. We were very lucky that things happened within certain minutes that allowed members to escape the House floor unharmed. But many of us nearly and narrowly escaped death. And it's also extremely traumatizing. And what was also traumatizing was how unsettling that day was, because there was a sense that something was wrong. And obviously with the violence, but there was a sense that something was wrong from the inside.
All right. Still haven't heard evidence to that effect, but, you know, people talk about primarying AOC from the left, and, you know, my just general thing with the Democrats is like, none of this is going to help socialists at all. So, you know, don't even bother with the whole, we're going to primary you. Please primary her. I can't even listen to this. Like, her just repeatedly being like, it's not an exaggeration to say ... like literally a clear exaggeration. And just, God, the victim complex, astounding. The total lack of awareness around that. Please primary her.
As we saw, there were members of Capitol Police who were quite heroic. You know, we have many officers, and, you know, there were also Black and brown officers that were confronting white supremacists and putting themselves not just to protect men.
Okay, I just want to pause. The Black and brown police officers who were confronting the white supremacist MAGA people were doing so and are employed by a white supremacist government. So this whole idea that like the Black and brown officers are somehow heroes of like this racial justice system standing up to white supremacy. No, it's just authorized white supremacists. Those are the people, and that's the system, that's their system, that those officers work for. So protecting that particular kind of authorized white supremacy against the MAGA upstart white supremacists who are doing things too fast and loose and aren't authorized to do it. That's the difference. Also, speaking of authorization, fucking cops let them into the building. There's pictures of it. There is evidence to that effect, that the police were involved in this attack as well. So don't give me this shit about, you know, this was standing up to white supremacy. And the fact that she's trying to sell you on that is part of the problem here. It's co-opting left ideas in defense of the status quo. So anyway, it's just, she throws that in because she thinks it will play to the racial justice angle. It's a lie. It's a gaslighting attempt. It's distorting what actually happened.
But they put themselves in harm's way on the front line, facing the racist violence of white supremacists ordered by Donald Trump.
Again, you work for Empire. Your party funds the U.S. military, which is the largest purveyor of violence, a lot of which has a racial component to it around the world. You work for the most violent government in history. So trying to boil this down to we're the good guys, Trump's the bad guy, it doesn't work. You're all bad guys.
To attack the Capitol. And so there were those acts of heroism. But next to that, there was also acts of betrayal. And to run in the capital, in our nation's capital, and not know if an officer is there to help you or to harm you is also quite traumatizing. I know I myself, there.
So I don't know if any of you are like playing a drinking game out there. Number of times that AOC mentions her own trauma, but you're probably dead from alcohol poisoning by now, if so, and I wouldn't recommend this. The amount of fucking times she talks about her own trauma is making me sick. And that's traumatizing to me, and I just want to say that is on her.
There was a member, or rather there's a secure extraction point and a secure room that you may have heard a lot of people, members give interviews from. They say, I'm in a secure location. Republican members of Congress didn't wear masks. They refused to wear masks in that enclosed secure location. And now we are on, just in the last 24 to 48 hours, our third Democratic member of Congress who just tested positive for COVID because they were sheltering in that place. I myself did not even feel safe going to that extraction point because there were QAnon and white supremacist sympathizers and frankly white supremacist members of Congress in that extraction point who I know and who I had felt would disclose my location and allow me to who would create opportunities to allow me to be hurt, kidnapped, etc. And so I didn't even feel safe around other members of Congress.
Okay. Raise your hand if you have ever felt safe with anything that the U.S. Congress has done. Anyone? Again, it's like the lack of awareness here, the lack of, I guess just the amount of buying into the way we all are supposed to look at this imperialistic government that is committing so much harm around the world against us, against its own people. Nary a mention. But yeah, welcome to our world. I guess that's all I can really say. Welcome to our world. You don't feel safe? You feel insecure? I'm not part of MAGA. And, I don't want MAGA to succeed politically or in any other way. But for God's sake, what AOC is displaying here is a complete lack. I can't even. I've said it too many times. Let's go back to the video.
And to be kind of fending for yourself in that way.
Yeah, fending for yourself pretty much sums up living in the United States as a working person, due to the political efforts of her party. I mean, everyone in the government, but including her party. Fending for yourself. That's the United States. Live free or die. Well, more like live, air quotes, free and die, because that's what it's all about. It's, give me liberty or give me death. Well, how about both? Because that is actually the liberty system, is liberty for, 5% of the population and death for the rest of us.
Is traumatizing. And frankly, I know for a lot of you, I don't even have to describe it because you've been through it in school lockdowns and you've been through it in false alarms, or if, God forbid, some of you have been through that I hope and I pray that none of you have ever been in a shooting, but if you have been in a shooting, you know what that feels like. And it is no joke, it's no joke. And that's what happened Wednesday. Now, what happens now? We know that Donald Trump cannot be president. We know that we cannot wait until January 19th. We cannot wait until January 20th. We cannot wait until Inauguration Day. He cannot be president right now. He should not have been president yesterday. He should not have been president the night of the attack.
Again, I'm having a real hard time caring. I don't like Donald Trump, but his presidency is the result of decades of neoliberalism and decades of what her party has been, the violence and the trauma that her party has been inflicting on us, the U.S. working class, let alone the people of other countries who become a target of U.S.'s imperialistic, exploitative, and violent and traumatic foreign policy. Donald Trump is the logical outcome of all of that. He's not an aberration. He is exactly what you get. And this is not the worst of it. AOC is trying to sell you on this narrative in this clip, in this very inarticulate live stream she's doing, that, again, impeaching Trump, what do you think? MAGA's going to all become Democrats? They're going to come back in 2022 and 2024, and you can't impeach them all. You can't. They don't care what you say. They don't care if you impeach Donald Trump. Only you and the, self-described good guys with your good guy badges that you pin on your own chests, only you care about that legitimacy that you're, deciding to bestow or withhold. The MAGA people, credit to them, they are at least, to the extent that they're thinking at all, which is not much, but they're acting independently. In the sense they're an independent political force, almost like, reverse psychology level. Like it's a very primitive thought process they're using, but they don't care about things like legitimacy. Or are you not aware of that? Like, what AOC is doing here of pretending that decorum and legitimacy and tone and all of these things matter, they don't. We're in a war. I don't like that it's happening, but you're fucking blind if you don't see it. And Democrats out there trying to spread the illusion that the right wing is not launching a full-on assault, that they're effectively holding us back from fending off. They are just clearing the way for the right wing to do what they're doing. And she's doing all this, tapping on the desk with her hand in a certain position, like he cannot be president. He is president. I'm recording this on the night of the 17th. He's still the fucking president. He's not going anywhere either. And his followers aren't going anywhere. This problem isn't going away. We had George W. Bush and Dick Cheney for 8 years. That was a goddamn nightmare. And before that, a right-wing Democrat, Bill Clinton, with a right-wing Congress under Newt Gingrich. It's been right-wing, 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 right-wing. Obama ran on hope and change. He didn't fix a goddamn thing. He didn't undo the Patriot Act. He didn't undo the war on terror. He stole people's houses. Gave them to the banks, let the banks take them. On and on and on. Attacked 5 new countries. Where else was this supposed to end up but Donald Trump? So you can take Trump out of there. I don't care. I have a hard time thinking that's going to do the slightest bit of difference. And I don't believe for a second that the Democratic Party has a single goddamn answer to this. And people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and the rest of the squad, they dangle these social democratic carrots in front of your face. And we need some of those things. We need a Medicare for all system. We need some of those changes to happen. We really do. And they would be a starting point for any actually socialist administration. If we, the disorganized and few in numbers left, somehow managed to take power, we would do a lot of those things. You look at PSL or the Green Party, you look at the platforms of starting points for U.S. socialism. They would be some of those things. Of course, the foreign policy of Bernie Sanders is awful, and I can't not mention that. But she's putting out here Orange Man bad, and it's the root of the problem, rather than her own fucking party is 50% of the problem. And no one is really talking about seriously making any of the changes that would make the right wing die. You know, giving people health care, actually fixing the underlying problems that what's going on in the U.S. is a multidimensional problem. It's not just capitalism. It's the racism and genocide and all of the stuff that's woven into the fabric of the U.S. that makes its kind of capitalism particularly harsh, particularly exploitative. And there's a lot of factors. Just while things like Medicare for All and other programs, public housing, et cetera, would take a lot of the edge off and would materially fix a lot of the factors driving the instability, those things alone, it's not going to fix everything. And if we want to actually talk about moving away from the precipice of fascism that the United States has been, you know, I like to describe it this way. George W. Bush kicked down the door that had been rotting for a couple of decades. That was a new step. That was unprecedented. They kicked in the door. Obama started setting up the furniture. Trump is a dress rehearsal. Trump is a dress rehearsal for what's to come. We know that the federal agencies like ICE and the border. Oh, by the way, what happened to abolish ICE, which she ran on, which AOC ran on? I haven't heard that mentioned in I don't know how long. But anyway, all those people, I mean, there was a ProPublica story about ICE agents being, they found some Facebook group of like 10,000 ICE agents posting horrendous shit, horrendous right-wing fascist stuff, you know, laced with all the racist and anti-immigrant sentiment, etc. We already have those fascist, you know, brainless thug police institutions in this country. It's just going closer and closer and closer. And every few years, it just takes another step. It takes another breath. It changes form and it becomes more advanced, more consolidated, and a step closer to, I don't know what it's going to look like. I will say, I do think Trump is the dress rehearsal. And the next time it comes back, I don't know what to say. I don't really want to think about it. But trying to get back from this precipice of like falling into this right-wing crisis that probably will take literally a world war to get out of. Nobody wants that. But that's the path that we're on. And people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, they're not doing anything to fix it. In fact, they're hurting the problem and they're prolonging the problem and they're deepening the crisis by taking so many people on the left who should be listening to us, socialists, Marxists, and organizing an effective independent left. And they're co-opting all of them and they're tying their hands and they're trying to get them to share the trauma of Congress and identify their interests with these liberal interests. They are neutralizing the left, co-opting the energy, and they're leaving a wide open lane for fascism that little YouTube channels like this one, unless these start springing up like crazy and real fast and we get real organized, we're not going to be able to stop it. And that's just a fact. We in the left, the way it is now, we are not going to be able to stop the fascism that is around the corner. I don't know what else to say about that. Let's go back to the video.
Because Republicans and the people around him are cowards, they will not do it. And in fact, the secretaries, there is something known as so when people say, how do we get him out? How do we get him out? There are actually several avenues. So through the House and congressionally, there's impeachment. All
right. So, you know, I got into my own world, which I feel like is a little bit more informed by reality. She's talking about Republicans versus Democrats and impeachment. I can't even. You know what I think I'm going to do right now is cut this video off and upload it. And we'll maybe do the rest in a part 2 or 3 or something like that. And that's the video. Thanks to our current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen or just support us financially, you can go to patreon.com/socialism4all and sign up for a monthly donation. You can also follow us at facebook.com/socialism, the number 4 all. Used to have a page at FOR all, and it got throttled to death by Zuck. Here on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe button, and the notifications bell. Please leave a comment if you can, and please share our video wherever you're online, your Twitter feed, your Discord servers, Reddit subs, etc. All of that helps more people to see this content, whether it's in the YouTube algorithm or just posting it on other sites. All of that's helpful. All of you out there supporting and promoting this content makes it all go that much more smoothly. We need to end capitalism, normalize talking about socialism today, and it's really kind of our only hope for a better tomorrow. Thanks for all you do, and we will catch you in the next video.